G'day, you 9i STEM. In this video, we are going to go through creating your first CAD design in a program called OnShape. Now, we are going to work by creating the cube that you made with a Splat 3D. So if you have not done this yet, you need to stop the video, go get a Splat, practice this from the previous lesson, because you will need to have that knowledge before we get into OnShape. Now, just to give you a brief understanding of what the hell CAD is. Now, CAD is computer-aided design, and it's essentially where you create complex or mechanical objects or even engineered objects on a computer. Because before computers existed, we had to do pen and paper, and there was a lot of guesswork, like let's build a bridge 50 meters long. Is this design going to be strong enough to carry 50 cars and 20 buses and 5 trucks, all at the same time with boats going underneath? Those things were very difficult to do back in the day. And you'd have to create side drawings, top drawings, isometric drawings, all that kind of stuff. But now we've got CAD, computer-aided design, so we can essentially come up with a design of a 3D object and put it under all sorts of simulated tests. Okay, so in other words, we could put it in wind resistance, load resistance, movement, all that kind of stuff to see if the object will actually work before we start coming up with design or printing off designs and people actually building it and manufacturing it. Okay, so we can test these bridges before they even become a thing. Now, what can we do in the classroom? Well, we can create all sorts of 3D objects. You can create motors, you can create moving parts, and then you can put them in 3D printers, get them printed out, and actually have them become reality. That's the amazing thing about CAD. So let's have a quick look at another quick concept before we get into OnShape, because I'm going to be using these words a lot. Now, there are two ways of drawing objects. There is a perspective drawing and there is isometric. Now, using these Splat 3Ds, we've actually been drawing in isometric. Okay, and isometric is essentially this view down here. And we've been avoiding this perspective drawing. We might do it in the future, but not right now. But essentially the difference is perspective drawings have depth to them. So as things get further away, they get smaller. It's the age-old, you see a train track and it goes off into the distance. Well, when it goes off in the distance, they get smaller and smaller and they look like they're going to touch, but they never quite get there. That's because you've got perspective going into the distance. Whereas isometric, if I was to draw those train tracks, they would just stay straight the entire time, no matter how far away they went. There is no depth, and it's a weird concept, but as you start using it more and more and more, it makes a lot of sense. And the other great thing about isometric drawings is you get 3 views of your 3D object. You get a top and you get the 2 sides all in the same drawing. Now, you could technically do that for perspective as well, but it doesn't work as well as an isometric. Okay, so now that's said and done, get into OnShape, make an account, and create our first 3D object. So simply type in onshape.com. And this is awesome because it works on Macs, Windows, even Chromebooks. It's a completely online CAD program. And the first thing you're going to need to do if you haven't done it before is you're going to have to create a student account simply by clicking the link, typing in your name, and then for your email, make sure it is your username at education.newsouthwales.gov.au. Hit submit and go to your school emails by simply going to Gmail and then clicking on the account at the top. Now I'm going to close that because I don't want you guys seeing my personal emails. But yeah, register. It'll ask you to create a password and all sorts of other bits and bobs. Go and do that now. And once it's done, we can go back to the main screen, click on sign in, and log in with that education email and the password you chose. Now, please don't forget this password because I cannot reset it. Alrighty, what are we going to make? We're going to make our Splat 3D shape. We're going to make the cube with the hole and the cylinder and the cone popping out of it and all sorts of things. So we're going to make this from scratch in OnShape just to practice all the basic functionality and try out a few different things. But for the moment, we need to change one setting before we start. So what I'm going to do, on the main screen, click on your account name at the top here, hit my account, go over to preferences, and the first thing you're going to do is change the default unit for your lengths. By default, OnShape uses inches, and I don't want that. Who the hell uses inches? Bleh. Okay, either choose millimeter or centimeter. It's up to you which one you want to use. I'm going to go with centimeter today. And then you're going to click on the Save Changes button just there. Now, obviously, I can't save changes because I haven't made any. Click on that. When it goes gray, let's go back to our main screen. Okay, let's start off by creating a brand new document and then going through the interface and learning out how to actually use CAD programs. So at the top, click Create, click on Document, and name this CAD Practice. Now I'm going to call this number 2 just because I already have one called CAD Practice, but for you, just call it CAD Practice. Create public document and wait a few seconds. And here we are. Okay, let's go through the basics of OnShape, and then we're going to draw our shape and chop and add and all sorts of things. So at the very tippity top, we have got the main toolbar. Now all these icons, each one is essentially like a feature that we can add to our 3D model that we make. Now this, I'm not going to take you through these ones here, but the main ones we're going to look at is Sketch to create our 2D shapes that get turned into 3D shapes, Extrude, Loft, and that's basically all we're going to use. Fillet to Great One for adding rounded corners, or Chamfer if you want to cut a slanted corner, all that kind of stuff. And we're also going to use Shell at the very end of the video. Now on the left-hand side, we've got our features list. So as we add parts to our 3D model, it's going to add features. So you'll notice every single time we add, we get a new feature and it adds it to the bottom of the list. And the great thing about that is, if we ever want to rewind in time, we can grab this rollback bar and drag it up and sort of rewind in time, make changes, and then fast forward back. And those changes sort of trickle through our shape, which is amazing. I love it. It's one of the best features ever. The other thing we can do is if we want to turn things off or select things, you can click on things up here as so, and you can hide them by clicking the little eyeball at the top. Okay, so that's the features bar. Now our workspace, this is where, as we build our model, this is where we do our drawing. It's where it's going to appear. This is where we make our things 3D, chop out holes, round off edges, all that kind of stuff. You can also navigate this. I would recommend make sure you've got a 3-button mouse, something with a scroll wheel in the middle. Because what we can do, if I right click anywhere, I can drag this to rotate our 3D object around. If I click in the mouse wheel or middle click and hold it, then I can do what's called a pan. So that's moving up and down, left and right. I can also, if I scroll up and down on my scroll wheel, it'll zoom in on my mouse cursor, wherever it may be. So right click to rotate, middle click to pan, scroll to zoom. And if you find yourself really crazily lost like I do sometimes like this, what you got to do is find a white patch in your 3D model, right click anywhere and go isometric. And it goes back to that default isometric view. Okay. The other thing you can do for navigating as well, guys, is using this cube widget up here. If you want to zoom in on a specific face, you can click on it and it will zoom in on that one. Okay, you can also click on the corner to go like an isometric view on that corner. And you can even click on the sides to sort of rotate around. And once again, right click anywhere, white, isometric to go back to that default view. And I'm going to use that a lot in this video. Okay, so let's start by drawing our shape. Now, what you got to do is essentially think of a couple of steps. Is what's the biggest part of my shape? What does it look like when it's 2D? And how can I make it 3D? They are essentially the main steps. What's the biggest? What's the 2D? Make it 3D. So the biggest is obviously the cube. Okay, and what does it look like when it's 2D? Well, it's a square. Okay, it's as simple as that. And then we're just going to grab that square and sort of pull it up to make it a cube. So let's start with that. The first thing I want to do is turn off all the things I don't need. And I don't need the front or the right because I'm just going to work flat on the top view. So come over here, front and right. See you later. I'm going to leave the origin turned on because I want to use that for when I start drawing. So let's start off by choosing the sketch option to start sketching our 2D shape. So click on that. And the first thing that appears, what you'll notice is that when I clicked on sketch, It's added a sketch to our 3D model in the Features tab, and it's also brought up this sketch window here that essentially tells us you are right now sketching a 3D model. Oh, sorry, a 2D shape on your 3D model is probably the better way of saying it. And you'll notice all these icons here have changed as well, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So the first thing we're going to do is select where are we going to draw this 2D shape. And really, I just want to draw it flat in the center of my 3D model. So what I'm going to do is select the top plane, and it adds this giant rectangle, which is going to be the sketch that I draw onto. And what I like to do is when I'm sketching is select the face over here of what I've just started drawing on. So I've started drawing on the top, select the top face, and I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see it all. Okay, now it is time to grab the 2D shapes from up here. So these are all your main 2D shapes here. You've got some operations that we can use, and you've got what's called connectors or constraints. And we'll talk about them probably in a future video. For right now, I want to draw my rectangle that's going to be a square, and then I'm going to grow it up. Now, you might be tempted to grab this corner rectangle and draw it straight away, but a corner rectangle draws from one corner out, and then it grows the rectangle around those 2 points. I actually don't want that. I want to start in the center and grow my rectangle in all directions, so it goes around that center point here. So to get to that rectangle, simply click on the drop down, and there it is right there. Center point rectangle, and select it. So you'll see it's active. My cursor is now a little plus to say where do you want to draw your 2D shape. And I'm simply going to click on that origin point and then move the mouse to grow it. So click, move the mouse, get a rough size, and click again. Don't worry if it's not perfect, because we're going to make it perfect in a second. And now we've got a rectangle. Simple as that. Okay, before you do anything else, before you click again, before you choose a different shape, before you exit the sketch, I want to first of all show you how to set up the constraints or the size of your shape and the position. If you'll notice, this point in the middle is black, and that's because it's constrained. It is now attached to the origin point of my 3D model. If that origin point was to move, so here's the origin, here's my rectangle center. If the origin point moved, so would the rectangle. They stay together no matter what. They now have a relationship, essentially. These blue lines, however, these are not constrained. Blue means they're just sort of floppy. They're out there in the wind, okay? You can use blue lines, it's fine, but just know that they might stuff up at some point if you make any like crazy changes to your object. What I want to do is set the size of these to be a square. So you'll notice that when I move my mouse over these numbers, now these numbers only appear straight after when you made the object. Mouse over the number, type in the size you want it, so 10 centimeters, press enter, and you'll see it's put constraints on those sidelines to say that's where they're staying. Okay? Now I could click on this or mouse over this one and type again, no clicking involved, but I want to show you something different. Let me click on this rectangle to go back to the mouse cursor. Okay, you'll see that I'm left with these blue lines. Oh, I'm an idiot. I forgot to set the size of them. Well, what you do there is you come up and you select the dimension tool. Okay, and what I'm going to do is set the distance between these two lines to be 10 centimeters. So click on the top line, click on the bottom line, and then simply place your dimension somewhere on your picture. Type in 10, press enter, and then deselect that guy. So you'll notice that everything is 10 by 10. The center is put in the middle. It's all black to say it's all being constrained. And when you're happy to get out of the sketch, you simply hit the tick to say you're done. Boop. And look at that. Isn't he beautiful? He's amazing. Okay. Next step is I need to essentially grab this 2D shape and stretch it up to make him a cube. So you'll notice that we're out of the sketch and we're back to all these default icons. The one you want is extrude. Okay. Click on the extrude. You add a new feature and it's adding all these options. The ones we want for this particular operation are solid because I want the whole thing to be filled in. We want new because it's a brand new object. And then it's saying what faces do you want to extrude. Simply click on that square you made and you can see it's already going, okay, is this what you want? It's a preview of what we're creating. Okay, we are going to change, well, we're not going to change. You can change the end type. So the end is how far it extrudes. Blind is what we want because we're essentially saying go this far, however far I want it to be. So leave that as blind. We can change the direction of the extrude to go down or up, but I want it to go up. And for the depth, because I want this to be a cube, set it as 10. And you'll notice that the preview doesn't update until you click anywhere, really. And then it updates your preview because you're done with the depth. Now, if you're happy with that, if you got the right dimensions, it's going the right direction, you hit the tick, and look at that. You've got yourself a cube. Isn't he beautiful? Okay, and this is essentially our process. 2D, extrude, 2D, extrude. This is the process you'd use for basically everything in CAD. So there's our cube done. Next step, let's get that cylinder pulled out of the side. Now I could create a whole new object and then extrude it out, but I actually want to add it to the side of my cube. So what I'm going to do there is, again, start with a sketch, select where you want to draw, and we're actually going to select the side of the cube, and that rectangle gets added literally on the same position as the side of the cube. Click on the right to zoom in, and let's add in that circle for the cylinder. Now the way this is going to work is I'm going to use the center point circle just like I did for the rectangle, and I want to start in the center here, grow it out, and then I'll extrude it. But you'll notice that I can't quite find the center of this face. Okay, now it's working here. It's working perfectly fine for the bottom, but it's not working for the up and down to show me. What you can do in OnShape, if I put my mouse on this line over here, and then I slowly go down, it creates, there's a little orange square, and that indicates the center of that shape. So what I'm going to do is go find that square and then move across until we find right there. So now it's found the center of the object. Click, drag, and there we've got our circle. It's beautiful. Now let's set the size. We could dimension tool it, but I'm just going to type it in as 5. Press enter, so it's the diameter of that circle is now 5. And you'll notice when it shrunk, it sort of shrunk on all sides. And that's why I started in the center. Okay, hit tick. And there we go. We've got our next shape. And this is as simple as extruding this bit out here. So let's grab our extrude operation. Click on this guy here. Okay, and what I want you to make sure is up here, even though I've already clicked on the face, don't stress about that. Make sure this says solid and add, not new, because that would add a whole new shape, but I want it to be part of my cube. So make sure that says add. Okay, we'll keep it as blind, and let's try 7. Yep, I'm actually really happy with that. Let's quickly go back to this view. Let's hit tick, and look at that. We've extruded our shape. He's looking beautiful. Okay, now, next step, let's cut that hole out. Okay, sketch, face, front, and then we're going to choose that circle again, find the center, middle, click, click, 5, enter, tick. Okay, it's as simple as that. You're going to get into this habit of just like sketching, setting your dimensions, making sure it's all black or gray, that it's all constrained, and then we perform our operation. So the next thing is it might be tempting to come across these options and go, which one are we going to use? Now, when I first started, I always thought you would choose the hole. However, the hole operation is actually more for if you want to drill a hole through an object, and you can even put in like countersinks or like edges to it. We don't want that. We just want a simple hole pushed into our cube. So we're going to extrude again, believe it or not. Select this face here, and instead of adding, we are now going to remove. And the great thing is it automatically pushes into our cube because we chose the remove option. You can obviously change the direction, but it'll give you an error to say, well, there's nothing to remove. What are you doing? Okay. Let's set the depth to maybe 1 centimeter, I reckon. Whoops. Now I accidentally selected another face. Let me just click on the delete there. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the size of that. If you look at my hole, I think that's a good representation. Hit tick. Okay. Now, you can obviously see a problem. It's not hollow. It's solid. Let's not care about that right now. Let's just leave it as it is, and we'll come back to that at the end because I want to show you this rollback bar. All right, let's do the cone. Now, the cone, what we're going to do is we are going to not use extrude this time around. We're going to use a loft. And essentially what it is you set up 2 shapes, And they can be different sizes or different shapes. And you can extrude between them, okay? So the way we're going to create this cone is by sketching a circle and then sketching a single dot at the top. And OnShape will make the cone, which is absolutely lovely. So sketch on the top, change the top, and let's get that center point here. Now, should we do 5 again? We'll do 5 again. Like so. Hit the tick and go back. But now we're left with a conundrum. How do we get that point up here? I don't want to include it in the same sketch because that sketch is flat. I want it up. Okay, so I need to add a new sketch. This is going to be the first time we do 2 sketches in a row rather than just 1. And I actually want it in the center above that origin point because it's going to be like that's up and down, that's straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my front view back on because I know this is dead center and it's flat. Go to sketch and select this guy right here. And even though we're going to draw all the way up here, it doesn't matter that it's off that sketch rectangle. It's fine. What are we going to sketch? It might be tempting to maybe use a rectangle or a circle, but we can actually just use a point. And it's literally that. It's like a corner or a single floating spot anywhere. Click on your point, and I'm going to make sure I'm in the center. So hover over here, move up a chunk, and just click anywhere. There's your sketch. Now to control the height of our cone, I wanted to dimension this point. So just like I did last time, I'm going to go across and grab our dimension tool, click on the point, click on the line that it's going to attach to, and it's asking what's the height of that cone you want to make. So click anywhere. Let's try 7 centimeters. So it's like the same as the cylinder on the side over here. Hit tick, and look at that. We're left with a circle and a dot. And now we're going to use that loft operation. Grab the loft, and all we're going to do is make sure we select this face here and this point. And you'll notice it automatically swapped over to add when I did that. And look at this. It automatically knows exactly what shape I want to make because of the base shape and the top shape. And you can sort of change like the beginning and end shape. Like if you want to make maybe a bottle, you could make a bottle using those end conditions. I'm actually going to leave it. I'm just going to hit tick and look at and marvel at my amazing work. We are 99% finished. But it's not hollow, is it? How do we make it hollow? Well, we're going to use what's called the shell operation. And the shell is pretty easy. What it does is it selects one side of an object and it chops all the insides out. So if I select shell, click on the back, it's not bad. However, this doesn't look very good. So I'm actually going to cancel my shell and we're going to use the rollback bar. Okay, we're going to shell, but we're going to do it much earlier on. So grab your gray bar here, drag it up to the first, under the first extrude, which is where we made our cube. And you'll notice everything else disappears. It's not gone, it's just hidden from view because our rollback bar is up here. Now, anything we do here is now going to flow on to the other things. So let's do the shell right now. So when I add a shell, it's actually going to go underneath the extrude. So shell, let's just do the back because I think that's the easiest. And I'm going to set it to 1 centimeter. Could probably do skinnier, but let's leave it like that. Hit tick. And look at that. We've now got a hollow cube. And if I roll to the future, look at that. We've actually got a hole. Isn't that amazing? But we're missing a back. So once again, roll back to the shell. And let's fill in this back section. So we'll go sketch. Click on this face here, which is on the left. Yep. And let's grab that corner to corner rectangle because this is probably the easiest way to do it. Corner to corner. It's already dimensioned. It's already constrained. We don't need to worry about any of that. Hit the tick. And now we need to extrude or push that through. So let's extrude on this sketch. We'll make sure it's going the right direction by swapping it, making sure this is add, and then setting the correct depth. So this should be 1. Okay. Once that's done, hit the tick, and it's filled it in. But it is still hollow. That's the great thing about doing shells and then adding in that extra bit. So let's fast forward into the future. And look at that. Done skis. Show your teacher, guys. Great thing is it auto-saves, so you don't have to worry about any of that. Thanks for watching this 25-minute video. We're going to do something more advanced in the future, but for now, good job.